The Millerite prophetic expositors unanimous about the King of the North in Daniel 11 verses 40 through 45. An independent Adventist ministry, Truth Triumphant Ministries, on the 13th of July 2024, uploaded on its YouTube channel a sermon of the pastor Bill Hughes, Uriah Smith, the Idol of Many, Part 1. In this sermon, that pastor said,
well, the first situation where we see a difficulty with Uriah Smith is in the 1870s. And it has to do with the King of the North. Now again, many Seventh-day Adventists will tell you, oh, Uriah Smith is spot on when he says that Turkey was the final king of the North. Well, the facts are these. From the 1840s until the 1870s, Millerite prophetic expositors held to the belief that the final king of the North in Daniel chapter 11 was the papacy. And they held that position for a good reason. However, in the latter part of the 1870s, Uriah Smith began to preach and teach that the final king of the North was Turkey.
If I have correctly understood what Bill Hughes said here, he claims that the Millerite prophetic expositors unanimously held to the position that the King of the North in Daniel 11:40 through 45 was the papacy. This was so until Uriah Smith expressed his position that that king was Turkey. Bill Hughes said that these are facts. As far as I know, Uriah Smith indeed held to that belief. It is a fact. But what about Millerites? Did they, in the period from the 1840s until the 1870s, unanimously held to the position that the King of the North in Daniel 11:40 through 45 was the papacy? If somebody claims something, the burden of proof, logically, lies on the person who makes that claim. But Bill Hughes, in his sermon, didn't develop this point further and didn't give the proof. Obviously, he had a different aim. But I, as a listener, want to know if his claim is substantiated, so I decided to investigate this topic. Bill Hughes mentioned Millerites. I think that he means not only Millerites themselves, but also Seventh-day Adventists. So, I have looked up also the writings of Adventist authors from the period from the 1840s until the 1870s. I thought if at least one of the prophetic expositors held to different position, the Bill Hughes claim is not true. In this video, I will present my findings. I know that Louis F. Weir, in his book The King of the North at Jerusalem, wrote the following statement. The godly pioneers of the Advent movement, from their consecrated study of the Word of God, came to the conclusion that the power referred to in the closing verses of Daniel 11 was the papacy. Page 4. So, virtually, he held to the same position to which Bill Hughes does. Now, let's see what facts I have found. Does William Miller qualify for Millerite prophetic expositor? Definitely he does. In his public lectures, he expounded the Bible prophecies. Joshua Himes, in 1842, in The Midnight Cry, published Miller's lectures, Evidence from Scripture and History of the Second Coming of Christ about the year 1843, also printed as book in 1842 by Himes. In his sixth lecture, The Midnight Cry, December 10, 1842, page 4, Miller said, "We have now arrived to the end of the third division of the angel's history, for the next verse tells us, and at the time of the end, meaning the end of his power to tread on the church by his civil authority, or reign over the kings of the earth, and to dispose of lands for gain. I have brought you down, my kind hearer, through a long prophetic history of more than 2,200 years, and landed you at the year AD 1798, when the Pope of Rome lost his civil power. In the beginning of the year 1798, on the 15th of February, a French general, Berthier, entered Rome with a French army without resistance, deposed the Pope, abolished the papal government, and erected the Republic of Italy. The Pope, being taken prisoner, was carried a prisoner by them first to Siena in Tuscany, from thence to Florence, afterwards to Grenoble, and then to Valence in France, where he died on the 19th of August 1799, since which time the Pope of Rome has exercised no more of his former power over any of the kings in Europe or the Protestant Church. We shall now close our lecture on this history for the present, reserving the remainder of Gabriel's interesting history for another lecture. In the seventh lecture he said, "We therefore begin at the 40th verse of the 11th chapter of Daniel, and at the time of the end of the papal civil power. Now, another person has obtained this civil power. This was Bonaparte, the ruler of the French nation. This year, of which we are now treating, was the very year that the French destroyed the power of the Pope, and Bonaparte began his extraordinary career in conquest and authority. At this time, then, our prophecy begins, and Bonaparte is a person designated by the pronouns he and him in the prophecy. And at the time of the end shall the king of the south push at him, and the king of the north shall come against him like a whirlwind, with chariots and with horsemen and with many ships. This is a description of an alliance entered into by the king of Sardinia, Italy and Spain in the south, and Great Britain in the north for 6 years. It is clear that Miller, the leading Millerite preacher, thought that the king of the north in Daniel 11:40 was Great Britain, and the king of the south was the ruler of Sardinia, Italy and Spain. He also thought that the glorious land is Italy. He shall enter also into the glorious land, or land of delight, as it might have been translated. This, I have no doubt, means Italy. Bonaparte fought some of his most brilliant battles in this delightsome country. The Midnight Cry, December 12, 1842, page 2. Even this fact is enough to refute the Hughes claim, but I will add more. It seems that the position that the Pope in 1798 lost his civil power was the standard Millerite position. In the Midnight Cry, November 18, 1842, page 4, Joshua Himes published Diagram of Daniel's Visions, explained by C. French, who wrote, "Here commences the history of the fourth or Roman kingdom, Daniel 7, verses 7-8, as a persecuting power under its different forms. First, pagan Rome, 666 years. Second, Christian Rome, or the 10 kings who have their power 1 hour with the beast, Revelation 17:12, which we shall prove is 30 years. Third, Papal Rome, or the union of the civil and ecclesiastical powers of Rome to the time of the end or taking away of the civil power, 1260 years. Daniel 7 verse 25, 12 verse 7, Revelation 11 verse 2, 13 verse 5. Fourth, from the taking away the civil power to the final destruction of Daniel's fourth kingdom, with the brightness of the coming of Christ. Second, Thessalonians 2:8, a period of 45 years. AD 1798, the Pope of Rome lost his civil power. On the 15th of February, Berthier, a French general, entered Rome with a French army, deposed the Pope, abolished the papal government, and erected the Republic of Italy. The Pope was taken prisoner, was carried by them a prisoner first to Siena in Tuscany, from thence to Florence, afterwards to Grenoble, then to Valence in France, where he died on the 19th of August 1799. Since which time the Pope of Rome has exercised no power over any of the kings in Europe or the Protestant Church. We are now brought to G, the commencement of the time of the end, see Daniel 12:9, or taking away of the civil power of the Pope. Now from E.H. 1335 days, take E.G. 1290, and we have G.H. 45 years, or time of the end from the taking away of the civil power to the resurrection. If the papacy lost his civil power, how can it be the king of the north? Probably Millerites before 1844 believed that the king of the north was anything else but the papacy. In the pamphlet A Word to the Little Flock, 1847, James White wrote, "But Michael's standing up is to manifest his kingly power, which he already has, in the destruction of the wicked and in the deliverance of his people. Michael is to stand up at the time that the last power in chapter 11 comes to his end, and none to help him. This power is the last that treads down the true church of God, and as the true church is still trodden down and cast out by all Christendom, it follows that the last oppressive power has not come to his end, and Michael has not stood up. This last power that treads down the saints is brought to view in Revelation 13, verses 11 through 18. His number is 666. Obviously, James White believed that the king of the north was the papacy. Later, in the Review and Herald, November 29, 1877, he published an editorial, Unfulfilled Prophecy, in which he tried to refute Uriah Smith's position. He wrote, Now comes the point in the argument upon which very much depends. Does the 11th chapter of the prophecy of Daniel cover the ground measured by chapters 2, 7, and 8? If so, then the last power mentioned in that chapter is Rome. It seems that James White held to this his position until his death. Hiram Edson, in his The Time of the End, Its Beginning, Progressive Events, and Final Termination, Auburn, 1849, page 10, wrote, "But who is this king of the north? I answer, Russia. This king of the north is to plant the tabernacle of his palace in the glorious holy mountain, and there comes to his end, and none to help him." In Brevian Herald, January 20, 1853, page 142, James White, as the editor, published Otis Nichols' article Papacy and France, in which it is written, "England stands at the head of the Protestants in Europe, the king of the north. France now stands at the head of the papal power, the king of the south, and Russia is the power of the Greek church in the east, the three divided parts of the great city, Babylon." Revelation 16:19. At the time of the end shall the king of the south, France, push at him, the papal power, verse 40. This refers to the reversion of the papal authority to France by Napoleon I. The time of the end applies to the end of the 1260 years of the papal rule, the time appointed, verse 35. "And the king of the north, England, shall come against him, Napoleon or France, like a whirlwind, with chariots and with horsemen." Verse 40. This was literally accomplished by England and their allies under the Duke of Wellington, by whom Napoleon was made a prisoner to England. Verse 44 has been noticed. It remains to be fulfilled. "And he shall plant the tabernacles of his palace between these seas, in the glorious holy mountain, or, as it is in the margin, goodly mountain of delight." Verse 45. This, no doubt, means Italy, which is called the most delightsome country in the world. It is a long promontory of more than 600 miles, extending between the seas, the Gulf of Venice and the Mediterranean. The tabernacle of his palace may refer to Rome as the seat or tribunal of the little hall, or it may refer to Italy while under the French Empire, when Bonaparte was crowned the king. So the Millerite Adventist Otis Nichols believed, like Miller, that the king of the north was England and the glorious land was Italy. In his address to the public, and especially the clergy, on the kingdom, Boston, Himes, 1842, pages 98-100, Josiah Leach wrote, "The time of the end is a period to which frequent allusion has been made, and now we are brought down to the period where it is introduced. It has before been stated that the time of the end is from the fall of Popery, 1798, to the end itself. The king of the south, we have also seen in the preceding remarks, is Egypt, and the king of the north is Syria. Him, in the 40th verse, is the atheistical government of France. Thus, the king of the north, Syria, came against him like a whirlwind, with horsemen, with chariots or wheeled artillery, and with many ships, 2 British ships and a Turkish fleet. So Leach thought that the king of the north was Syria. In Bible Examiner, December 1st, 1854, pages 312-313, the editor, George Storrs, published the article Discordant Opinions, in which it is stated, "We do not believe that Russia is the king of the north. It is our opinion that any power that reigns over Syria for the time being, the king of the north, spoken of Daniel 11, hence that Turkish dynasty is now 1854 that power. If Russia, Austria, England or France should become possessed of the supreme power over Syria, then it, whichever it might be, would then become the king of the north. Till then, none but the Turkish dynasty occupies that position. In our opinion, our views of Russia, Turkey, and France are known to our readers. No arguments, no ridicule that has yet appeared has in the least shaken our mind. Yet we do not affirm that we are right. Events may convince us that we are wrong in this matter. We have no theory at stake and shall feel, we think, no mortification to find we are just what we believe all others to be, fallible. From this, it is clear that the Bible Examiner publishers held to the view that the king of the north was the Turkish dynasty, and their opinion was contrary to the Hiram Edson's view. Interestingly enough, James White partially reprinted this article in Review and Herald, December 12, 1854, page 134. By doing so, he virtually acknowledged that there was the difference of opinions on the subject of the king of the north in Daniel 11, 40 through 45 in 1854 among Millerite preachers. This fact strongly refutes Bill Hughes' claim about the unanimity of the Millerite position, and it also shows that Uriah Smith was not the first who believed that the king of the north was Turkey. In Review and Herald, August 24, 1869, John Andrews, as the editor, published John Loughborough's article Judgment, in which its author wrote in the footnote, page 67. The charge is made by some that this time was sealed up, and so we have nothing to do with it. It was only sealed till the time of the end. There are 2 events given to mark the time of the end. In Daniel 11:35, we learn that the people of God were to fall by the hand of the papal power till the time of the end, but none have fallen by the hand of that power since AD 1798. In verse 40 of chapter 11, we read of this power that at the time of the end the king of the south shall push at him, and the king of the north shall come against him. In 1798, this was literally accomplished. France pushed at the papacy, and England pushed against France. We are now in the time of the end. It is clear that in essence, Loughborough held to the same view as William Miller and Otis Nichols did. Now I will give an overview. The difference of opinions among Millerites Adventists on the subject of the King of the North in Daniel 11:40 through 45 during 1840-1870s. First, the King of the North is Great Britain. William Miller, Otis Nichols, John Loughborough. The second, the King of the North is the Papacy. James White. The third, the King of the North is Turkey. George Stolz. The fourth, the King of the North is Russia. Hiram Edson. The fifth, the King of the North is Syria. Josiah Leach. I think that these facts are enough to refute the Hughes and Weir's claim that the early pioneers unanimously held to the position that the King of the North in Daniel 11 verses 40 through 45 was the papacy. After this, if the pastor Bill Hughes still wants to stick to his opinion, he must rewrite the history, like the Oceania Party did in the George Orwell's book 1984. But he has no such power, and as a Christian cannot and will not do it. That's why he must abandon his position and must not make that claim in his future sermons.